Hello everyone, this is Kathy from the Daily Marker, and today is day 9 of the 30-day coloring challenge, and I want to show you the main elements of how I made this card with this Stamping Bella image. Oh, it's just so cute. I love it. I love this set. It's so adorable. It's called Chickadee, and I die cut and stamped with some Memento Tuxedo black ink. It's Copic friendly ink. And I'll be cutting the chicks off to make like a little 3-car train. That doesn't eventually work out in the end, but that was my intention, and that would make a super cool, nice, long, dramatic card. Now let's go ahead and color the chick. I'm just using 2 colors, and then I'll use a color for his belly. I always like to have like a pink or rosy stomach and little rosy cheeks. Now I'm just laying down the first layer of color. I just want to get that a little bit wet. And then I will be taking my darker color, the brown, and scribbling that on some packaging. That's what I have close. And that will make it easy to blend these 2 colors. This is some packaging from the stamp set. And if you just smear that on anything shiny, later I'll be grabbing an acrylic block. It's easier, but anything works. The brown color is E35 and Y21, I believe it is what I'm using as my base color. Now I'm loading the brush with the brown, and then I'm laying it down on top of my first layer. And you can see how it just makes it blend really nice. And this is a great way to get more mileage out of your markers, especially if they don't work well together. So you have to keep loading that brush after 1 or 2 strokes of the marker tip. Now I'm going to go back and add some more detail on the little crevices with the brown, and then I'll blend that out again. Here's the acrylic block. You can tell it's well used, and that is a Y21. I'm loading that brush, and I'm just flicking that color in, and it really makes blending super easy. So I hope you give this a try. Many of you probably might do it already, but it's really a great way to blend. Now, you have to remember when you're done with that marker, you want to scribble that color off the tip, because a week later, if you use that, you might get a little surprise when you take out your marker to color it. Now I'm adding some dots with the darker color and then the lighter color just to give it a little bit more texture. And then I'm going to take my rag and wet it with some Copic blending solution. And my rag is nice and nubby and has a lot of texture, and that'll add texture to this little chick. Before I do that, I'm going to flick in some color with this rosy pinky color. Use anything. I use RV11 a lot. So I like that little glow by the belly and then the cheeks. Now here's the various ink. This is just a regular rag. It's nubby. You could use denim. You could use a screen. You can really experiment with different textures. Now sometimes you get a little bleed through the lines, and then you can just take a 0 marker and push the color back up towards the image. And you might need to let it dry and come back and do that again if you get some bleed through out of the lines. I'm just doing some basic coloring on the antlers, just 2 colors. It really doesn't matter. You don't really notice any blending or even that I use 2 colors. I'm going back and pushing some of that color back into the image, and I'll repeat this several times until I have the result that I want. Now I grabbed my phone, I looked up like wrapping paper. I wanted to get some different textures to figure out how to color all these presents. It's a lot of presents. I don't love coloring presents that much. It's part of the reason why I ended up with not a 3-car train. Now you'll see it at the top of the other chick. I have another chick I was just experimenting the colors with, since I die cut 3 of these. I'm going to end up taking that and putting them inside one of these little cars. It's a sled. I don't know why I'm calling it a car. So I colored the bow red and I put down a base layer on the blue bow. I'm just going to put some darker accents on the blue bow and just very basic coloring here. It's a small little area, so it's not worth spending a lot of time. So I'll take my lighter color and just blend that out. What I love on the packaging of the Stampin' Bella stamps, they're colored images, so it really is a great guide for you if you're not too sure where to add shading or even what colors to use. It's just a great guide. Now I'm adding pink to the packaging on this present, and then I'm going to take my zero Copic. It's a color, it's the barrel. What's filled inside the barrel is the various ink that I used to add the texture on the chicks. So I added some dots and it removed the color, so it makes it stand out more for a polka dot pattern. And I'm just deciding what color to color the sleigh. I'm going to do some red and green. I'm not going to do any shading here at all. I'm just going to speed this up to save a little bit of time. Now I have my Sharpie super fine tip marker here, and I like using this because it doesn't bleed into the coloring. So I do have a Copic marker I use sometimes, and I have to be a little bit careful because it can bleed into the image. So that's why I love a Sharpie. It's a permanent marker and it works great. It's a really nice tip. And I love to outline an image. I really think it makes your coloring pop. And I really suggest you practice, give it a try. I really think you'll like it. Now, I always start from one point to another point. You want to have little start and stops where it's kind of natural to start and stop. And this way it'll be easier for you to be successful with this technique. I hope that makes sense. Now I've picked up my 0.03. It's super fine. It's a very delicate tip. And I'm just outlining these stripes. I don't want this to be as thick of a line as the outline of the image. So it's super fine, and I just like to add little details to the presents. I'm tracing those circles on the package and adding some accents to the bows. I'll be using this later to add eyebrows and eyelashes to the eyes. I've picked up my Sharpie again, but the 0.03 is where I add those uber tiny details, very subtle. So I'm just finishing my outlining here, and then I'm going to add some white gel pen accents to the top of the bow. Just a reminder, I always like to add it to my finger to warm up the tip. I'm using the packaging, the beautiful coloring on the packaging, kind of as a guide where to add the accents. Since it's a small image, I don't want to go crazy with blending, so I'm kind of using cheats. And I'm adding a stronger white line on the blue bow here. And then I end up adding too much on the red bow, and it looked so ugly. So what I ended up doing was cutting a bow off one of the other packages, and then I thought I would just glue it on top of this present and recolor that. And then that's how I came up with the idea, instead, just to cut it entirely off and put the chick inside the sleigh here. I'm going to go ahead and outline the chick. I'm going to speed this up. I don't like to make my videos too long because I know I'd much rather you be coloring. I'm going to be grabbing my 0.03 again. I want to add some, I always like to check it on this before I begin, and just add 3 little eyelashes above the eyes. And on the other chick, I'm going to add eyebrows. I'm adding some glossy accents to the nose, and then I'll set this aside and finish some of the presents. So here's the bow. I cut it off. I wanted to see how it looked to glue that on to the part that I didn't like, the part of the present where I messed up the bow. I've cut the border off the wing. I want it to hang over the sled. So I'm just gluing that on right now. Sorry, I'm off camera. And I'm just figuring out how I want this all to work before I color images I don't need to. Now see that I added too much white accents on the bow. Ugly. So I'm going to cut this present off, and the sleigh will be used for the little chick if I want. But I decided I'll just put this present behind the chick in the sled. Sled, sleigh, whatever. So I'll be gluing that on the back here and adding some foam tape so it doesn't look like it's just glued behind him. Sometimes there's not enough paper to attach these images together. So I take a scrap piece of paper and glue it behind it, and it gives it, I make like a little tag, and it really helps. I thought you'd want to see the back of that. I added foam tape, and now I've masked off a circle. I'm going to put it behind here, and I've stamped my sentiment. I'm ready to go. All I need is a background. So I have this brush. It just gives it a nice soft look, and some distress ink. I think my ink's a little dry, but I'm just going around. This is going to be a moon, just with a nice soft layer. These brushes are great because it gives you a nice soft look versus using like the distressing tool with the foam brush. So it's a completely different look. So now when I finish this, I'm adding some distress ink with the distressing tool with the foam brush because I want more concentrated color. So I always like to start in the corners and bring the color towards the center. I want the outer corners to be darker. And I'm adding 2 different colors. I just want an interesting looking background. So it doesn't matter what colors you layer, just use what you have. Now this is like a charcoal or a gray. I kind of wanted like a smoky sky. So I'm adding that 3rd layer on top, and I've sped this up because it's not necessary to watch that in slow motion or regular. Now I'm grabbing a stencil. It's a Simon Says Stamp stencil. I love the look of stencils. I've been doing this way back. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. And I just want to get a little bit more interest in the background. So I'm using that same gray color, and I'm using a heavier hand in the corners. I kind of hover in the corners, and then I slide my distress tool down towards the center. I kind of want a gradient color. So I lifted. I don't take the time to tape stencils down. I just hold it firmly in place and then move my tool around that. So I'll be lifting that up since it doesn't cover the length of my paper, and just figuring out where to place it. And then again, adding a heavier ink in the corners and bringing that towards the center. Super easy and really makes your cards pop. I forgot to mention that I grabbed a white piece of scrap paper and just held it down to make a foreground. I just held it in place with the stencil, and then that's how it came out. It's really no fuss, super quick and easy, and it really makes your images pop. Sometimes I color the moon, sometimes I don't. You can see where I added the super fine lines to the wrapping paper, white accents to the bows, glossy accents to the noses, eyelashes and eyebrows, and little dots on the fur. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you Stampin' Bella for having me as a guest designer, and see you during the coloring challenge. Alrighty, bye.